You didn't arrive here because you wanted to. You arrived because you were called, not by me but by a part of you that has already awakened and demands that the rest of you follow. I speak, but it is your consciousness that responds. Nothing in this visible world happens by chance. Nothing appears before its time. Nothing crosses your path unless it aligns with the state you have already begun to assume internally. This video is not an external message. It is a mirror you have placed before yourself. And now here at this exact moment, I tell you, the cycle has closed. I see when a cycle ends. I see when a person's consciousness begins to tire of repetitions, when what once seemed like destiny starts to lose its power, when life out there insists on showing that there is nothing left in that old state to offer you. You feel this, even if you don't admit it. You feel the weight of what no longer serves you. You feel the emptying of old stories. You feel that there is something within you that can no longer continue living as before. This is not failure. It is a calling. It is transition. It is opening. You stand before a door that doesn't open with force but with consciousness. And I know you've tried to change your life in every possible way, changing people, changing environments, changing routines, changing behaviors. But none of that sustained any change because you never changed your state. And everything that isn't born within dies outside. You were trapped in a circle, repeating the same sensations, the same fears, the same judgments, and calling it my life. But now, at this instant, you begin to realize that the circle was never a prison. It was a mirror. What was repeating wasn't the world. It was you. And when you understand this, when you finally accept that the visible is a shadow of the invisible, when you understand that life doesn't create states, it only reflects the ones you assume, then, and only then, the cycle closes. You arrived here because you are ready to abandon the illusion that something external controls your destiny. I am speaking to you like someone waking another from a deep sleep, because that is precisely what happened. You slept within an old state, a worn-out identity, a repeated sensation that became a habit. And today now, you are being pulled out of that dream. I don't speak to convince you. I speak to remind you. You were the one who decreed this encounter. You were the one who determined this moment. And if you are hearing me now, it is because the part of you that knows the truth has finally overcome the part that fears change. I tell you with authority, nothing you fear has real power. Nothing you desire is beyond your reach. Nothing you seek is waiting for time, luck, or circumstances. Everything is already prepared in the invisible, waiting for you to assume the corresponding state. And this moment, this exact moment, is the spiritual signature that you are ready for this. The old cycle has ended. The new one begins when you decide to remain in the end you choose. I didn't come to bring you hope. I came to bring you remembrance. Remember who you are. Remember the power you carry. Remember the law that governs all. Now breathe as one who has entered a new state, because you have. The first principle you need to understand is this: the end already exists, and everything you call the path is merely the bridge that appears to take you to what is already yours. I speak in the first person because I see with absolute clarity humanity's greatest illusion. People believe they need to construct every step, control every detail, understand every movement. But I tell you, life is not asking you to build anything. It is asking you to assume the end is a reality, not a possibility. It is already complete at the level of consciousness. And when you choose it, when you clothe yourself in it internally, when you rest in it with silent certainty, everything around you begins to move with absolute precision to make it visible. Not because the world has a will of its own, but because it is obedient to the state you maintain. I see people expending energy trying to force the world to adjust to their desires, trying to push circumstances, manipulate events, convince people, modify external conditions. All of this is useless effort. There is no true change outside of you. The only real change is in state, and everything you see out there is merely a consequence of that state. When you assume the end becomes the cause. And the cause doesn't have to fight, it simply is. What you call a process or path is nothing more than a sequence of facts that rearrange themselves to reflect the reality you have already accepted internally. You do not command the how, You merely order the result by the state you inhabit. If you assume, for example, the consciousness of someone prosperous, loved, healed, or chosen, the bridge of events begins immediately. This doesn't mean you will see grand signs. Sometimes the first movement is invisible. Sometimes the world seems not to move. Sometimes the opposite even appears to arise. But none of this is a problem. The bridge doesn't appear to please you, it appears to guide you. And if it is necessary to remove something, break something, distance someone, or close doors for the end to manifest, so it will be. You are not in control of the form, but you are in control of the cause. And the cause is the state you decide to assume. I tell you firmly, remain in the end. Do not visit the desired state for a few minutes and then return to the old state out of habit. You cannot harvest from the new while sowing in the old. To assume the end is to stay there, even when nothing confirms it. It is to rest, as God rested on the seventh day, not from exhaustion but from certainty. When the end is accepted as real within you, your entire life bends to it. People you've never met appear. Paths that didn't exist open. Opportunities that seem accidental appear before your eyes. They are not coincidences, they are responses. The world is not testing you, it is obeying. And when you finally understand this, when you live from the end and no longer from the means, when you decide that your state is unshakable, then the cycle of struggle ends. Nothing can resist the assumed end. This is how the law operates. This is how it has always operated. And this is how it will operate for you now, if you remain. The second principle I need you to absorb is to completely abandon appearances. Because as long as you treat the external world as true, you will remain its slave. I speak directly because I clearly see how most people live, reacting to what their eyes show them, as if that were the ultimate authority over their lives. But I say, nothing you see is a cause. Nothing you observe is an origin. Everything that manifests is merely the delayed trace of an old state you maintained. The error of people is to look at the effect and forget the internal cause. They see difficulty and shrink back, as if it held power. They see delay and despair, as if time commanded life. They see lack and believe it is real, when in truth it is only a reflection of a state that can be ended now, at this instant. Abandoning appearances is not ignorance, it is spiritual discipline. It is to look at what contradicts your desire and refuse to treat it as relevant. Because if you treat it as real, it strengthens. If you react, you feed it. If you comment, you confirm it. I say, appearance is the last echo of the old state. Nothing more. It has no power to survive if you do not sustain it with your attention. And I clearly see that many of you miss simple manifestations because, at the slightest sign of contradiction, you rush back to the old state, like someone abandoning a garden merely because they see a weed sprout. The weed is not the problem is forgetting that you are the gardener. When you abandon appearances, you become untouchable. Not because the world has changed, but because you have stopped kneeling before it. You begin to walk as someone who is not seeking external evidence to believe. You believe first, and the world follows. This is the correct order. That is why it says in Scripture, "Judge not according to appearance." It was not a moral counsel, it was the description of a law. Appearance is a delay. The truth lies in the state you choose now. And if you remain faithful to that state, the appearance must dissolve, it has no choice. I affirm, when you truly abandon appearances, you cease to be a victim of the visible. You stop chasing signs, stop getting emotional over every temporary change, stop oscillating between hope and fear. You fix yourself on internal reality, like one who knows that the cause is in your imagination. The world stops being a judge and becomes a servant. And when something arises to contradict you, you do not despair. You merely smile because you know you are witnessing the end of an old creation, not the beginning of a new one. Remaining in the state is the only proof reality demands. And when you do this, appearance loses its mask and reveals what it always was: nothing. The third principle you need to understand is that all true prayer is sensation. It's not words, not repetitions, not desperate pleas trying to convince something outside of you. I speak with authority because I know that the only language the subconscious understands is that of sensation assumed as fact. When you feel, you create. When you internally assume that you already are, already have, already live what you desire, reality has no alternative but to align with what you have decreed within. Sensation is the creative act, and everything that manifests is first born as an internal experience, a silent vibration that you maintain even when no one sees. I observe many men and women asking, as if God were a separate entity, evaluating who deserves and who does not. But there is no one outside of you deciding your life. Prayer is not a request to the heavens, it is an intimate acceptance. You do not convince God, you convince yourself. You do not plead, you embody. When you enter the state of the wish fulfilled, when you feel the reality as complete, when you mentally rest in that end with naturalness, your prayer is done. And such a prayer is impossible to be denied, because there is no greater power in the universe than consciousness assuming a state with conviction. The problem is that many try to feel only with their minds. They try to imagine, but continue to perceive themselves as someone who desires, rather than someone who possesses. But desiring is the state of lack, and everything you feel as lacking continues to repeat itself because you are inhabiting the state of not yet. I say, prayer is to feel now what you would live if the desire were real. It is to internally put on the vibration of the final result. It is to walk, think, breathe, and react as someone who has already received. It is not theater, it is creation. It is not fantasy, it is law. This sensation, when sustained, molds the future with precision. It reorganizes circumstances, inspires people, alters paths, and breaks down invisible resistances. Nothing can prevent what you sensorially accept as true. The correct sensation is worth more than 1,000 words thrown to the wind. And I tell you something few understand. You are already living the sensations you planted in the past. Your current life is the harvest of the sensations you repeated, consciously or not. Now you have the opportunity to choose new seeds. And when you feel the end as an internal reality, you will also feel the inevitable transformation of your external life. This is how prayer operates. It is impossible for it to fail. The fourth principle I need you to understand is that you are always assuming some state, even when you believe you are creating nothing. Consciousness never remains neutral. It never pauses. It never rests. Every emotion, every reaction, every repeated thought, every silent expectation is a seed cast into the soil of your subconscious. What you live today is not an accident. It is a harvest. And even if you have not consciously assumed the state that generated your current reality, you have sustained it by habit, by carelessness, or by lack of vigilance. Life does not distinguish intention from distraction. It reflects the dominant state. I observe with clarity that most people live assuming states to which they pay no attention. When they are frustrated, they assume the state of failure. When they compare themselves, they assume the state of insufficiency. When they fear, they assume the state of loss, and they do this repeatedly. Without realizing, they are silently commanding their reality to obey the states they chose automatically. They think they are not creating because they are not desiring, but creation does not depend on desire. It depends on state. You create in enthusiasm as much as in weariness, in faith as much as in doubt, in courage as much as in fear. The law does not pause because you do. Therefore, I say, consciousness without discipline is chaos. You need to guard your states with the same attention a guardian watches the gates of a palace. Because if you do not decide the state you will inhabit, the world will decide for you, and the world always decides by the weakest, most repeated, or most emotionally charged state. But when you take control, when you deliberately choose the state you wish to maintain and refuse to abandon it, even if the world provokes you, even if circumstances scream otherwise, then you become the commander of creation. To assume consciously is to refuse to be shaped by yesterday. It is to not allow mood, others' opinions, current results, or environment to dictate your identity. It is to declare, internally and silently, I am this, and to remain even when appearance tries to pull you back to the old. Your state is the decree. Your persistence is the proof. Your repetition is the signature. Life has no choice but to reflect what you consistently maintain. And when you understand this deeply, when you realize that you are always assuming, and that you can assume with intention and purpose, you cease to be a victim of your emotions and become their author. And in that moment, your entire reality begins to change. The fifth principle you need to accept is that everything is already complete in the invisible before it appears in the visible. There is no future creation. There is only revelation. I say this with the authority of one who sees the root behind the tree. What you desire is not being built little by little, as if God needed time or tools to form your reality. What you desire already exists as a complete state within your consciousness. Manifestation is not the birth of something that did not exist. It is merely the appearance on the screen of the world of what you have finally accepted as true within. When you understand this, despair ceases, because you realize that you are not waiting for something to come. You are merely allowing something to reveal itself. Most people suffer because they think they are trying to get something, as if life owed them. But I say you are not trying to get anything, you are trying to allow your own internal creation to become visible. Difficulty arises when you doubt, when you look at circumstances and say, "It's not happening." But it is impossible for it not to happen. Once the state is accepted, the invisible moves with absolute perfection to reveal what you decreed. The problem is not time, nor life, nor God. The only obstacle is your oscillation. You enter the desired state and in the next moment return to the old state because you saw no immediate signs. But the invisible doesn't need to give you signs, it needs you to persist. I see clearly, when someone accepts the desire as an internal reality, even for an instant, the process is already complete. However, when that person doubts, they pull up the seed before it sprouts. Not because the desire is fragile, but because the human mind insists on looking externally for confirmation. That is why I insist, assume the end and remain in it. It is not necessary to understand how, when, or by whom the desire will come. The how belongs to the path. The state belongs to you. Your only job is to accept that it already is, not as fantasy but as internal fact. When you truly understand that everything is already complete in the invisible, you stop chasing, stop fighting, stop pressuring life as if it would deny you. You rest in certainty. You move with gentleness, you act with naturalness. Nothing in you vibrates with lack, because you know that what is yours already exists, and what exists in the invisible cannot be prevented in the visible. Revelation is inevitable. Circumstances have no power to block the assumed state. When you decide that the end is real, all that remains is the moment of delivery. And when that moment arrives, the world calls it a miracle. But you know it was merely consciousness showing its true work. Now I need you to listen to this conclusion with the same seriousness with which a king receives a final decree that changes the course of an entire kingdom. Because that is exactly what this moment is for you. From now on, you will no longer live as one who asks. You will live as one who commands. You will no longer walk as one who begs the world for signs. You will walk as one who knows that signs follow you. All the struggle you experienced was born from the belief that power was external, scattered in the hands of circumstances, people, time, destiny, luck. But I tell you, none of that ever had authority over your life. The only authority has always been the state you chose to inhabit, consciously or not. And today you choose consciously. The old cycle has closed. The repetition has ended. The version of you that reacted to the world, that allowed itself to be intimidated by appearances, that lived oscillating between faith and fear, between desire and doubt, between hope and despair, that version cannot return, because you cannot undo an awakening. Once you have seen the law operating, you can no longer pretend to be a victim. Once you have felt the power of imagination, you can no longer act as if you are helpless. Once you have understood that the end is the cause, you can no longer live trapped in the means. The consciousness you now carry is definitive. So I tell you, assume the state and remain in it. No matter what happens, no matter who says otherwise, no matter how much noise the world makes, remain. The sustained state overcomes everything. Reality has no choice. It does not negotiate, does not argue, does not resist. It obeys. When you assume, it fulfills. When you decree, it delivers. When you feel the end as a fact, it reveals. You are no longer asking for changes. You are commanding silently with the conviction of one who knows their inheritance. Stop begging. Stop waiting. Stop seeking validation. Live now as one who has already received what they desire. Think as one who already has. React as one who has already achieved. Rest as one who knows that revelation is inevitable. Life is your servant, not your master, and from this moment on it will obey the state you maintain. Go. Carry this certainty with you, and remember, everything already is. Everything is already complete. What you seek is within, and what is within cannot fail. Close your eyes. The world you see out there is not what truly exists. It is merely the echo of what vibrates within you. Every gaze, every encounter, every event that seems to happen is, in truth, the universe's silent response to what you feel to be true. Life is a mirror that never lies. It doesn't show you what you want, but what you are deep down. And as long as you believe you are an observer of circumstances, you will remain a prisoner of them. But the moment you understand that the external merely reflects your internal state, something changes. You shift from spectator to creator. What you call reality has no will of its own. It is malleable, plastic, obedient to the conviction of whoever perceives it. Therefore, when I tell you do this for 1 minute and watch the impossible manifest, I am not talking about effort, blind faith, or fleeting optimism. I am talking about inner authority. The force that moves the invisible doesn't come from the words you speak, but from the feeling that sustains them. And feeling is born from conviction. Desire, by itself, creates nothing. To desire is to acknowledge a lack. To assume is to declare possession. Reality does not respond to those who ask. It responds to those who have already decided. For this reason, for 1 minute, just one, I ask you to interrupt the world's noise. Silence the doubting mind, close your eyes to the senses that lie, and enter the space where everything is possible, the space of conscious imagination. Breathe, and begin to affirm what you have chosen to be, 100 times if necessary, not like someone trying to convince themselves, but like someone remembering, because truth doesn't need to be created, it just needs to be reaffirmed. Understand this. Each repetition is a hammer blow to the invisible structure of your mind, shaping what the physical world will later display. 100 times until the word ceases to be sound and becomes flesh, until thought transforms into sensation, and sensation into certainty. At that point, there is no longer any distance between what you feel and what you experience. The exterior, which seems solid and insurmountable, begins to bend before the new image sustained within you. And that's when the impossible loses its name. Because the impossible isn't a law, it's merely the limit of your belief. 1 minute of pure conviction is worth more than years of misaligned effort. 1 minute where you feel ownership of what you desire is worth more than 1,000 days of asking for it. The world doesn't need time to change, it needs a state to reflect. So, in this minute, do not seek. Affirm. Do not wait. Declare. Do not observe what is. Feel what will be, as if it already were. And repeat until your body obeys, until your mind silences, until your heart knows. The reflection has already changed. The impossible does not resist the one who remembers who the mirror is. Everything that exists outside of you is merely the mirror of what vibrates within. Circumstances have no life of their own. They obey the silent tone of your internal state. The most common human error is believing that the world happens to them, when in fact the world responds to them. Every word you say, every emotion you feed, every image you mentally repeat is a silent command sent to the mirror of reality. The reflection doesn't create, it merely returns what is being projected. This is why every attempt to change the exterior without first changing the interior becomes an endless struggle. It's like trying to correct a reflection without altering the face in front of the mirror. The world is a reflection, not an origin. And this is one of the simplest and most overlooked truths. As long as you strive to manipulate circumstances, people, situations, or outcomes, you continue to reinforce the idea that they have power over you. But nothing out there has any power, except that which you grant it. Everything that appears, lack, abundance, love, rejection, success, or failure, is merely confirmation of the state you've decided to sustain, consciously or not. The reflection can change in 1,000 ways, but the cause is always the same, what you accept as truth deep within. Notice how faithful the reflection is. If you see yourself as limited, the world will give you proof of that limitation. If you see yourself as capable, opportunities will arrange themselves to confirm that vision. And when you change how you feel about yourself, no external force can prevent the transformation of the scenery. Reality is not stubborn, it is obedient. The problem is that most people try to command it with words, when the real command lies in feeling. It all begins when you stop reacting to the mirror and start observing it with awareness. Instead of saying, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What within me is being reflected here?" This simple shift returns your power. What once seemed like chaos reveals itself as correspondence. You realize that each situation is a coded message, a reminder of the state you are sustaining. And from that point you can decide, continue reflecting the same or choose a new inner image. Changing your internal state doesn't require physical effort, only emotional decision. When you choose to feel differently, even if nothing has changed yet, the mirror begins to reorganize itself. Sometimes slowly, sometimes abruptly, but always in faithful response to the new image you have assumed. And it is at that instant that the impossible becomes merely a matter of time. Because the reflection does not resist, it only knows how to obey what is looking at it. Every inner word is a seed. No thought passes in vain. Every idea, every mental phrase, every feeling sustained with conviction is a silent instruction to the invisible field that shapes your life. The mind is not a repository of random thoughts. It is a fertile garden where everything planted germinates according to the nature of the seed. Thoughts of fear, doubt, and scarcity take root just as thoughts of trust, abundance, and love do. The difference lies only in what you choose to cultivate and water. People often believe that thinking is harmless, but nothing is more powerful than the internal dialogue you repeat every day. The words you murmur in silence are creative decrees, saying "I can't," "I'm never lucky," or "everything goes wrong for me," is like sowing desert seeds in your own garden. Over time, the soil responds with what it has received, and there's no way to harvest them without first changing the type of seed. When you understand this, you realize that all power lies in consciously choosing what to plant. Saying, "I am capable, I am prosperous, life favors me," is not empty optimism. It is internal engineering. Each repetition makes the mind familiar with a new vibration until the body and circumstances align with it. It's a natural process. The invisible begins to move, and what was just a word becomes an experience. That's why it's so important to monitor what you say to yourself when no one is listening. Spoken words have force, but thought words have command. It is in them that the unconscious guides itself to create. What you mentally repeat becomes the vibratory pattern that the world decodes as instruction. Thus, life doesn't give you what you want, it gives you what you believe yourself to be. Repeating a phrase doesn't change the world immediately, but it changes the center from which the world is perceived. And when the center changes, the reflection inevitably transforms. Every time you affirm something with feeling, you are carving a new path in your own consciousness. Circumstances then bend, as if they were merely actors awaiting the new script. Therefore, choose your words as one chooses their destiny. Speak to yourself only what you wish to see reflected. Water the right ideas with emotion, and the wrong ones will die from lack of attention. The law is simple. What you repeat with feeling, you create. Words are not just sounds. They are seeds of entire worlds waiting for someone to speak them with enough faith to make them blossom. Everything that exists was born first as an image. Before any gesture, there was a vision. Before any achievement, someone dared to imagine. Imagination is the silent rehearsal of reality, the stage where the invisible trains to become visible. When you imagine something and feel as if it's already real, you are writing the script that the physical world will be compelled to enact. The mind doesn't differentiate between what is imagined and what is experienced. To it, both are facts. And that's why everything you emotionally accept as true within yourself begins to take shape outside of you with no apparent effort. But most people use imagination as an escape, not as creation. They dream only to escape what is, instead of using the dream as an instrument to decide what will be. They imagine what they desire with longing, not with certainty. They want what they want but continue to feel what they fear. And it is in this gap between imagining and believing that power is lost. Imagination only creates when it is felt as reality, not as possibility. When you see yourself, even in silence, living what you desire, something moves in the invisible, not by chance, but as a response. The mind is the cradle of all events. No event reaches you without first having been rehearsed in that inner theater. Every memory, every thought, every image you sustain is a continuous vibration that attracts its equivalent in the world. Therefore, conscious imagination is an act of responsibility. You cannot choose the consequences without choosing the images that generate them. Everything you see externally has already passed. It is solidified, past. The future is being molded now, in what you dare to feel as true. When you begin to use imagination with purpose, something changes profoundly. Internal scenes cease to be daydreams and become decrees. You don't imagine to dream, you imagine to determine. You close your eyes and see what you have chosen to be as if it already were. You walk, speak, breathe in this new state until the vibration becomes natural. And the world, faithful as a mirror, responds with circumstances that correspond to this new inner tone. Nothing is created at the moment it appears. Everything already existed as an image before being seen. The gesture is merely the echo of the idea. The physical world is a delayed mirror. Therefore, whoever understands the power of imagination stops reacting and begins to anticipate. Instead of waiting for the future to happen, they rehearse it with feeling, knowing that the stage of life has no choice but to play the role that was written in consciousness. Imagining is the supreme art. It is seeing the invisible with such clarity that the visible hurries to catch up. Persistence is what transforms the invisible into reality. It's easy to imagine for an instant, to feel hope for a day, to repeat words for a week. The difficult part is to remain in the chosen state when nothing seems to be happening. But it is precisely then that creation begins. Doubt is the last obstacle before manifestation. It arises to test your faithfulness to the invisible. Most people give up when the reflection hasn't changed yet, which is why they remain stuck in the same cycle. The one who persists, even without proof, rewrites the code of their own existence. Persistence is not stubbornness, it is sustained conviction. It is the ability to remain steadfast in feeling, even when the entire world seems to contradict you. It is to look into the void and still say, "I know what is real." This silent certainty is what reorganizes the invisible lines of reality. While the common mind allows itself to be swayed by the senses, the awakened mind knows that the senses are delayed, showing only what has already been. To persist is to remain in the future until it becomes present. When you decide on a new state, wealth, love, health, peace, the old state will try to pull you back. It uses time, appearances, memories. But all of this is illusion. These are echoes trying to convince the Creator that the creation has not yet happened. Do not believe them. Continue sustaining the new sensation, even if the body still remembers the old. The physical world is slow, but it always obeys. It's like pushing a heavy boat. At first it doesn't move until suddenly it begins to glide. To persist is to choose loyalty to the invisible rather than reaction to the visible. It is to act as if the new is already a fait accompli, even if nothing confirms it. And the firmer you remain, the more the old loses its power. The previous vibration dissolves from lack of attention. The new state takes root until it becomes natural, and at that moment, the exterior has no choice, it must yield. No force resists a mind that refuses to doubt. Persistence is the point where imagination becomes flesh, where the invisible finds form and desire transforms into fact. Many call this a miracle, but it is merely the consequence of one who remains. The universe does not respond to haste. It responds to consistency. The one who doubts starts over at every instant. The one who persists advances, even in silence. The impossible does not collapse before desire. It collapses before persistence. Sustain the new state until it becomes more real than any contrary evidence. Because true faith does not need guarantees. It creates what does not yet exist. Inner acceptance is the final seal of creation. It is the moment when you stop trying, waiting, seeking, and simply know. Acceptance is not passivity. It is the point where conflict ends. It's when you feel effortlessly that what you desired is already a part of you. At that instant, desire ceases to be something out of reach and becomes identity. The universe, obedient to your internal tone, begins to silently reorganize itself to confirm what has been accepted as fact. Nothing happens while the mind insists on struggling. As long as you think it hasn't arrived yet, you are declaring absence. As long as you ask when will it happen, you are affirming distance. Acceptance dissolves this resistance. It is the natural state of one who understands that the game is over, that there is nothing more to conquer, only something to allow to reveal itself. When you genuinely feel that it already is, the world has no choice but to agree. To accept does not mean to wait silently for a miracle. It means to live as if it has already happened. It is to eat, walk, breathe, and think from this new point of reference. It is to act effortlessly because the conviction has already been established. The right people, opportunities, and even coincidences begin to move in your direction, attracted by the vibration that acceptance emits. And all this without haste, because time is merely the space that life uses to align the visible with what you have already decreed in the invisible. Acceptance is the opposite of anxiety. The anxious mind seeks signs, but one who has accepted already recognizes them even before they appear. It is the state of someone who observes the world with tranquility, knowing that nothing can escape what has already been determined internally. It is like planting a seed and not digging up the soil every day to see if it's growing. You trust the process, and this confidence, silent and serene, is what accelerates everything. When you truly accept, desire disappears, because there is no longer any separation between you and what you desire. The struggle ceases, the internal noise silences, and life begins to move with ease. It is at this point that the invisible crosses the border and becomes tangible. No forcing, no insisting, just allowing the inevitable to manifest. What has been accepted with conviction cannot be denied. What has been felt as real cannot be prevented. To accept is to recognize that it already is. And when the already is settles in, the impossible simply dissolves. Because the external world, however solid it may seem, has no power of its own. It is a faithful reflection of what you have decided to inhabit. And when you inhabit the final state, creation ends. All that remains is to watch the reflection align with what, within you, has already happened. Now understand, nothing outside of you has the power to decide the course of your life. Circumstances, people, time, all are merely actors on the stage that your consciousness writes. You are not here to await miracles, but to reveal them. What seems distant is not impossible. It is merely unassumed. Everything you accept as truth within yourself begins to move in your direction, and the more convinced you become, the faster the world bows to the new order. Therefore, do not beg for change. Command it. Do not wait for life to prove something to you. Prove to life that you have already decided. The universe does not understand pleas. It understands certainty. It does not react to desires. It reacts to states. When you say within yourself with firm feeling, I am, you are sending a decree that no force can revoke. From that instant, paths open, resistances dissolve, and what seemed distant begins to approach naturally. Do this now, just 1 minute. 1 entire minute of absolute presence, of total certainty. Choose the state you desire and immerse yourself in it as if nothing else existed. Repeat 100 times if necessary until your body feels, until your heart knows, until your mind silences, and then just remain. Because in that instant, the world has already begun to change, not because you asked, but because you assumed it. The impossible is not what cannot happen. It is merely what has not yet been sustained long enough within you. When your conviction becomes stronger than appearances, the impossible is shamed and kneels. Remember, reality is obedient. It will always follow the command of the state you decide to live in. And when the state changes, everything changes. So, from today, live as one who already possesses. Think as one who already is. Feel as one who has already triumphed. Because the law is perfect, and those who fulfill it in silence see the invisible take form before their eyes. Close your eyes. Breathe deeply. What you call reality is not an unbreakable wall. It's a projection, a shadow molded by what you feel to be true about yourself. Nothing that happens around you is by chance. Everything is a response. Life is the echo of what you affirm, consciously or unconsciously, in the silence of your heart. Most people live like sleepwalkers, believing the world is something separate from them, fighting against circumstances they themselves sustain with fear, doubt, and attachment. But there are few, very few, who understand that reality is malleable, alive, and obeys the inner command of feeling. This command is not made of complicated words, but of pure vibration. That is why I, Abdullah, speak to you today about the divine mantra, a single phrase capable of reordering the world around you in minutes, if pronounced with conscious faith. It is not superstition. It is not religion. It is not magic in the common sense. It is spiritual science, the power of sustained imagination, which transmutes thought into form, invisible into visible, idea into substance. When Neville came to me, confused and full of desires, I did not give him external instructions. I gave him an inner posture. I taught him to live as one who already possesses what they desire, not as one who waits to receive. Because the universe does not respond to words, but to states of consciousness. If you feel poor, the world shows you poverty. If you feel sick, the body obeys. If you feel whole, the world bends in harmony. It all comes down to this: reality is a mirror of your inner state. The divine mantra is a reminder that there is no separation between the Creator and the creation. When you pronounce it with conviction, the sound vibrates beyond time and touches the substance of life. For 10 seconds, you abandon the role of petitioner and return to the throne of command. For 10 seconds, you remember that the force that moves the sun and the stars is the same force that pulses within you. And when that remembrance ignites, matter responds instantly. Today, you will learn not just to repeat words, but to command realities. This is the secret. The power is not in the phrase, it is in the consciousness that sustains it. If you dare to say the mantra as one who already lives the result, the world will reorganize before your eyes. Because one who assumes the state of fulfillment does not need to wait. They simply declare, "It is done now." The first principle is to understand that the Creator does not ask, they declare. That is the difference between the common person and the awakened person. The common person supplicates, prays for help, implores for signs, and lives believing that strength is outside of them. The awakened person, however, speaks with silent authority, because they know that power moves from within to without. When you ask, you are affirming that you do not yet have. When you declare, you are recognizing that you already possess. The universe responds not to the sound of words, but to the frequency of the feeling that sustains them. A request is a vibration of lack. A declaration is a vibration of possession. And life always mirrors what is felt as true. That is why so many pray and few manifest, because most pray as beggars, not as heirs. You were created in the image and likeness of the Creator, not to ask permission, but to give form to the invisible. When you say, "It is done now," you are not trying to convince the world. You are simply remembering the eternal truth. Everything already exists in potential within you. What is called a miracle is merely the materialization of that which has been inwardly accepted as already completed. Declaration is an act of recognition, not of conquest. It is like turning on a light in a dark room. The light always existed but needed to be called into manifestation. So too it is with your blessings. When you speak with conviction, the invisible awakens and takes form. Saying, "It is done now," is like flipping the switch of reality. It is a silent command to divine substance to organize itself according to your vision. One who declares is not in a hurry because they already live in certainty. They do not watch the clock or external signs, they remain firm in the assumed state. And it is precisely this emotional stability that makes the world yield. The universe bows before one who does not doubt. That is why faith is not hope, it is anticipated possession. To wait is to confess absence, to believe is to affirm presence. When you declare, time ceases to exist because the mind is anchored in the eternal now. Observe the great masters, prophets and sages. None of them asked. They pronounced the word, and it was done. Rise up. See. Walk. Open up. Simple, direct commands, laden with certainty. There was no room for if, nor for when. The creative force flows only through the mind that recognizes its own authority. When you understand this, you will stop supplicating to heaven and begin to command the earth. To say the mantra is therefore to declare sovereignty. For 10 seconds, speak as one who awakens the universe itself. Do not wait to feel something. Speak until you feel it. Declare until the vibration of doubt is replaced by certainty. In that instant, something invisible moves. Circumstances begin to reorganize, people are touched, doors open, the path unfolds. Because the visible world is merely the servant of the inner state, and one who declares with true faith never speaks in vain. The second principle is to understand that the power of the mantra is not in the words, but in the emotion that accompanies them. Words are just the shell. Feeling is the seed. It is feeling that plants reality in the invisible field of the mind. 10 seconds of pure emotion are worth more than 1,000 mechanical repetitions. You can say the phrase all day, but if the heart is empty, nothing will move. The universe does not respond to the mouth, it responds to the heart. When you say it is done now, you must feel that the entire universe hears you. Imagine that the sound emanates from within your chest and vibrates in all directions, like a silent command that traverses time and space. Divine energy does not recognize lifeless words. It moves only when there is fire in the feeling. It is this fire that distinguishes faith from hope. Hope is weak, it is expectation. Faith is vibration, it already tastes victory before it happens. Observe how the body reacts when you truly believe. The heart quickens, the air changes its weight, something within you expands. This is the sign that the command has been accepted by the deep consciousness. It is in that instant that the invisible begins to reorganize itself. Therefore, when I tell you, say it for 10 seconds, it is not a magic number, it is a symbolic measure. 10 seconds of total surrender are enough to change the vibration of an entire destiny. But purity of focus is required. Do not mix doubt with power. If the mind says, "What if it doesn't happen?" do not argue with it, simply return to the feeling of certainty. The secret is simple, feel first, see later. Emotion is the mold, reality is the mirror. When you feel as if you have already received, the universe has no choice but to deliver the corresponding form to you. Remember, you are not trying to force the world, you are simply aligning yourself with what is already true. What is felt as real within becomes visible without. That is why many fail, because they speak with their lips, but their heart remains full of fear. Doubt is the language of separation. The emotion of certainty is the language of creation. When repeating the mantra, close your eyes, breathe deeply, and feel the warmth of the divine presence within you. See in the invisible the result already fulfilled. Feel the peace of one who has arrived, the gratitude of one who already possesses, the relief of one who no longer needs to wait. It is this vibration that creates. The phrase merely awakens it. The mantra is the trigger, but the feeling is the engine. And when both unite, word and emotion, the impossible bends. Because life always responds to the intensity of what you feel, not to what you say. The third principle is to understand that everything happens now. Time is merely a contrivance of the human mind, an illusion created to measure the movement of things. Divine consciousness, which is the true power dwelling within you, knows neither past nor future. It lives in an eternal present. When you say one day, you push the miracle away. But when you declare it is done now, you dissolve the distance between desire and manifestation. Reality responds to the instant you assume the state of fulfillment. The common mind believes that one must wait for signs, that things take time, that there are stages and linear paths. But the awakened mind understands that time is merely a perception and that the now contains all possibilities. When you assume a feeling as true in this moment, the universe already begins to reorder everything to correspond to that new state. The delay is not in the world, it is in consciousness. It is thought that postpones, fear that blocks, doubt that creates intervals between what is and what could be. Therefore, when using the mantra, do not say it as one who plants something that will sprout tomorrow. Say it as one who opens a window and lets the light in. You do not create the sun, you merely remove the curtains. The now is that open window. Everything you desire already exists in potential and is waiting only for your acceptance. When the feeling of "it already is" settles in, the entire universe bows to confirm your truth. Every time you think of tomorrow, you are confessing that you do not yet have today, and that thought keeps you trapped in the same state. The key is to inhabit the result now. Speak, feel, and act as one who has already arrived. The vibration of arrival attracts the circumstances of arrival. The secret of creation is psychological, not chronological. Do not wait for something to change in order to believe, and the world will change. When I taught Neville, he also thought about how and when. I told him, nothing comes from without. Everything comes from within. Time only serves those who doubt. To those who know, time bows. And this is what you must understand. The now is the point where all miracles are born. So, when you pronounce the mantra, do not look at the clock or the calendar. Close your eyes and feel the power of the instant. Say, "It is done now," with the certainty that the universe has already moved. And remain calm, like one who observes the ocean obeying the wind. Because in the instant your heart believes, time ceases to exist, and reality begins to bend before your conviction. The fourth principle is to see the invisible. The external world is merely the surface of a deep ocean, and one who lives only by what they see is condemned to repeat what already exists. The true creator does not look at appearances, they look through them. To see the invisible is an act of conscious faith. It is to perceive with the eyes of imagination that which does not yet have form. And when that vision is sustained with feeling, the invisible becomes inevitable. Most people only believe after they see, but the awakened person sees before they believe. They understand that the inner vision is the mold of manifestation. Everything that exists in the visible world was first an image in someone's mind. A bridge, a house, a healing, a fortune. Everything began as an invisible picture held with certainty. That is how creation occurs. First in the mind, then in matter. When you close your eyes and imagine the fulfilled result, you are not dreaming in vain. You are sowing in the divine field of consciousness. It is there in the invisible that the new reality comes to life. And when the feeling becomes so real that the body reacts, the heart quickens, the breath changes, the eyes fill with emotion, in that instant, creation is complete. The physical world will merely follow the trace of that vibration, but seeing the invisible requires courage. It requires ignoring what the senses scream. It requires you to look at scarcity and see abundance, to look at illness and see health, to look at emptiness and see fullness. That is why few manifest, because they still believe more in what they see than in what they feel. The Creator reverses this logic. They feel first, see later. When you use the mantra, close your eyes and see. See life responding to your new identity. See people treating you according to the new state. See doors opening, money arriving, peace reigning. Do not just imagine it as a distant scene, but live as if it is happening now. Walk through this mental scenery with the naturalness of one who already belongs to it. And above all, do not doubt. Doubt destroys the image, like wind extinguishing a flame. Every time the mind tries to remind you of reality, reaffirm within yourself, what is real is what I feel now. The invisible is the raw material of the visible. When you sustain the inner vision, The world has no choice. It reorganizes itself to reflect what you have decided to see, because life is not what happens before your eyes, but what you insist on seeing with your heart. The fifth principle is to repeat the mantra until the mind yields. Initially, the mind will resist. It will laugh at you, call you foolish, try to convince you that nothing has changed. It will do everything to keep you trapped in the old state, because it has been trained for years to believe in what the eyes see. But it is precisely there that true power is born, in the silent persistence of one who refuses to doubt. Every repetition is a blow to the wall of disbelief. Every time you say "it is done now" with feeling, a part of the old self dissolves, and the new state begins to take shape. The rational mind needs proof, but creative consciousness does not. The universe does not react to logic, it reacts to certainty. When you repeat the mantra, you are reprogramming the heart to believe in what reason does not yet understand. It is like teaching your soul a new language, the language of possession. And when it learns, the entire world begins to speak that same language. Therefore, do not stop at the first resistance. Continue even when nothing seems to happen. The invisible moves in silence, and faith is the only sound it recognizes. 10 seconds of total surrender, repeated with conviction, can change the course of an entire life. The secret lies in constancy, not in fleeting intensity. Power accumulates with each repetition, like drops that, falling on the same spot, carve a path through the hardest rock. Repeat the mantra as one who affirms an eternal truth, not as one who tries to create something new. The creation is already complete. You merely call it into manifestation. And the more you repeat it, the more natural it becomes within you. Until at a certain point, something changes without warning. You realize that you are no longer trying to believe. You simply know. And when that knowing awakens, manifestation is instantaneous. Say the mantra with reverence, not as a ritual, but as an act of remembrance. Every time you pronounce "it is done now," you are affirming that the power of God acts in you, as you, and through you. Say it until you feel peace, until the body relaxes, until thought quiets, because in that inner silence the universe begins to move. So, persist. Even if the mind screams, continue. Even if the senses deny, continue. Even if the world says, "not yet," continue. Because in the instant your heart believes completely, matter will have no other choice but to obey. And in that sacred moment, you will understand that you never needed to achieve anything, only to remember that everything was already done. Now you understand, nothing in the world happens from outside in. Everything is a reflection of the state you choose to sustain within yourself. Life is the mirror of your belief, and the universe is the faithful servant of your conviction. The mantra is not a magic formula, it is the reminder of your divine inheritance. When you say "it is done now," you are not trying to create the impossible. You are simply returning home, to the place where everything already exists. You were not created to beg for blessings, but to command them. You were not placed in this world to wait for something to change, but to decree change through consciousness. Every time you ask, you confess absence. But when you declare, you recognize possession. The Creator within you awakens the instant you stop imploring and begin to affirm. And it is this remembrance, silent, firm, and alive, that reorders the heavens and the earth in your favor. The visible world is slow, but the invisible is immediate. The moment the feeling changes, the vibration shifts and reality begins to adjust. You may not see it in the same second, but the transformation has already begun. And if you remain faithful to the new state, the old one dissolves due to lack of attention. Such is the law, such it has always been. So from today, abandon waiting. Do not say, "one day it will happen." Say, "it is done now." And remain firm in that consciousness, even when the exterior does not yet reflect it. Time is merely the slow mirror of faith. The universe has no choice before one who knows. And when the old world tries to pull you back, close your eyes and return to the inner throne. Breathe, declare, and feel. Say, with calmness and authority, "it is done now." Because when that phrase becomes true within you, the impossible bends. Everything opens, everything adjusts. And you finally understand that there is no distance between what you imagine and what you live. There is only the intensity with which you believe. Assume, therefore, the state of fulfillment, of live as one who already possesses, speak as one who has already received, feel as one who has already won. Because one who knows that everything is already done does not wait for miracles, they command them. And the universe silently obeys.